greatest volume of occurrence, as I said, of volcanoes occurs within the Pacific Ring of Fire. In the Pacific Ring of Fire, the largest volume of volcanoes, as we said, are in these subduction zones that are indicated within green. Challenger Deep is where the first submersible was able to get into the Marianas Trench. That occurred right here, just for those who are interested. And what we've got here is really two types of volcanoes that get created in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Those, like Mount Fuji here, which are quite symmetrical, and interestingly, Mount Fuji is actually two mountains. They are two ancient volcanoes that have now merged into one large volcano. This symmetrical volcano, it's got lovely symmetry, is very effusive. The matter comes down very hot because we've got so much tension and pressure pushing into the earth that the matter being really hot results in a nice fluid, viscous matter that erupts. And we get that all the way through this far western edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire. So this zone here has this nice symmetrical volcanoes for the most part. In contrast to that, we've got these volcanoes, Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens, right here. Now, Helen lost her top and side back in 1980, so she looks a little craggy because she is suffered a catastrophic failure. So, but what you should get here is that although they have symmetry to them, they are a much rougher looking landscape, and that's because these volcanoes do not have the same volume of tension on the fault line that the western edge of the Pacific have. That means that the matter is not penetrating as deep as quick, so the pressure is weaker. That means they don't heat up as fast. That means that when these volcanoes explode, the matter is cooler and comes out with greater thickness, if you will. It's kind of chunky. So you get these quite irregular shapes as a result. In contrast to that, here's what Certsi looked like when it was erupting back in the mid to late 60s. It is very much like a shield volcano. It erupted for several years at a time, and really just is part of an edge of this particular rifting that's happening with the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So it occurs out here on this out here in the Atlantic. In a similar vein, the Reykjavik Peninsula, which is out here, started out as a string of islands, volcanic islands, that merged together. Just about where this green arrowhead is where the current volcano is erupting. And it's quite like this. Not a lot of flow. The volume of flow is pretty slow, but it's steady. And I've got a video for you a little bit later. Third to that, in terms of volcano occurrence, is at hotspots. And hotspots mostly occur in the middle of plates, as we have with Hawaii right here, and Yellowstone being the two most famous hotspots that Americans are familiar with. The largest volume of hotspots, as you can see, really do occur on the African plate here. And basically what's happening here is, if you can imagine the asthenosphere being under a lot of heat and being under a lot of tension underneath this plate boundary or underneath this plate boundary, and they're a long way away from an edge, that pressure needs to be released. And what ends up happening is the pressure creates a crack at the surface, and that crack is essentially breached by magma, and that magma then finds a vent and starts to emit matter out of that vent. So hotspots and mantle plumes, I've got both Hawaii and Yellowstone here, and with both of these, the location for the hotspot doesn't change, but we know from plate tectonics that the plates above the mantle move. So as the plate is moving, the location of the hotspot stays the same, which means that we're constantly creating new mass. So if you think of Hawaii as being a string of islands, and we know that here's North America, and here's the current location of Hawaii, and this is where the hot spot is. The Pacific plate is moving in this direction. The oldest volcanic cones occur up here. They used to be right here over the hot spot, but as the plate moves over time, that original location takes up this space, and then as it moves, then it moves along and along and along and along. Most of these seamounts now, they are no longer islands, have lost their structure for over millions and millions of years of sea erosion. So what used to be an island that looked very much like the Hawaiian Islands has been lost to the effect of water erosion. So our islands pretty much are right here. By the time we get through the ridge and then the Empire Bend, we don't have much left of what used to be a structure created by the eruptions right here. So here's a close-up. Here's the direction of that plate movement. All right. So with that, we've got lots of places on the surface of the earth where tension is mounted. Some of that tension is greatest at those plate boundaries, but the volume of tension can be transmitted through and across rock structures. Here in the United States, this is a map of geothermal energy hotspots where we've got higher and lower concentrations of temperature and energy that can be accessed for geothermal purposes. So we can use them passively to heat buildings. We can capture them actively as steam vents and things like that. And what's really kind of neat is out here in the middle of Pennsylvania is we've got a geothermal area which is sort of moderate in terms of temperature. So it's enough that it could be used as a supply source for a variety of different energy needs that would and could augment other energy sources.